Hello, my name is Preston Webster. In the midst of implementing Common Core standards, this message is for staff at schools who have in the past struggled to implement new standards or strategies. If your school is not improving, the cause is likely here. After we work to align curriculum from standards to units and to lesson plans, as we move from what to teach to how to teach it, we find again and again an aligned curriculum is no guarantee of classroom change. In fact, this work leads us to a common point of failure. An assumption that aligned curriculum maps units and lessons will change teaching. Actually, more is required to complete the transition from what to teach to how to teach new standards or strategies. Common Core outlines standards while allowing schools and teachers the freedom to define how to teach the standards. For Common Core, this distinction between what and how makes perfect sense. But the how part is the problem. It is precisely in the translation from what to teach to how to teach it that things go wrong. We struggle in the transition from our best intentions to reality. We struggle in the transition from intended curriculum to actual curriculum. When we fall short of implementing change, we often lack finishing details that define new teaching. Teachers have not been the problem in my experience. Instead, we have failed to provide them the right kind of focus, processes, tools, and time to succeed. We have failed to help them finish translating what to teach to how to teach it. In the last 13 years, I've had the fortune of training teachers full-time, not for hours, but for days at a time. Nearly all the training I've done with teachers has been from 4 to 8 days in length. I've read thousands of daily evaluations and tracked a very personal and individual process of teacher change. After our sessions, I observed the impact we did or didn't have in classrooms. Sadly, regardless of our good intentions on the last day of training, after we enthusiastically applauded the presentation of new lesson plans, the school year revealed the majority of these lessons were rarely taught as intended. There was a persistent failure in the transition from our intentions to actual classroom practice. As time went by, I realized this was true regardless of the intended change. Whether addressing new standards, strategies, or content, the point of failure was the same. We weren't bridging the gap between new standards, strategies, lesson plans, and practice. I need to note two factors that contributed to the most dramatic improvement in classroom teaching. The first thing we did to increase classroom change was to reduce the volume of information we were presenting to teachers. It is easy to overload training agendas, to overestimate what can be assimilated into classroom teaching at a given time. Knowing this, it still happens to some degree. Classroom results require a constant effort to carefully target a few high-impact goals and then streamline the message, process, and tools. A related step to increasing our effectiveness came when we recognized the ongoing issue with time and finally did something about it. Over the years, we just haven't found a lot more time for professional development and planning, so we took steps to be more effective with the time we have. Consider this. I was training teachers in days, but teachers function in a system of hours. My days of teacher training had to model how to produce results in the hours of a school day. We had to create brief cycles of planning or revising lessons. So what has had the most impact on classroom results? Simply put, we stopped making assumptions about what it takes to prepare for new teaching. We stopped making assumptions about the readiness level of teachers and the readiness level of curriculum. Understanding the depth of this problem can be difficult. For years, we were drawn into a false sense of achievement. We were excited about our accomplishments as we completed and presented new units and lesson plans. Teachers would comment about their eagerness for the new school year so they could teach their new lessons. But for years, best intentions never made it to the classroom. When questioned about not using their new lesson plans, teachers often commented about unfinished aspects of the materials, feeling like they still needed to complete one thing or another before the lesson was ready to use. With plenty of competing tasks at hand, finishing one thing or another on their lesson rarely happened. But there were success stories. Talking to teachers that used their new lesson plans, I found a pattern. Partly their threshold for risk-taking was higher than most, but mostly I found that they planned lessons differently. They were more complete. All teachers were planners, but this struggle helped us more fully appreciate the different definition of lesson plans found district to district, school to school, and even department to department. This confusion made it hard to clarify measurable outcomes. We just had to be more certain about some questions. For example, at what point are lessons really ready to teach? Are teachers ready to teach differently? Do we know what success looks like as we teach new standards or strategies? Have we defined formative assessments so we know if students are getting it? And have we defined new teaching enough to assess what worked and what didn't so we can make revisions? The different definitions of a lesson plan kept pointing to a need to answer these questions, and herein was the solution. Focusing on questions of readiness highlighted the fact that lesson plans are not the goal anyway. Classroom teaching and learning are. Focusing on designing and planning answers to those questions of readiness led us to a solution. We began focusing beyond lesson plans to materials of practice, the materials teachers use to teach. This changed everything. The focus of our work immediately became less about training and lesson plans and more about the reality of teaching moments inside a classroom of individual teachers. The increased focus and clarity gained by working on actual classroom materials also had a positive bottom-up effect on the alignment of lessons and units. As teachers planned their way through moment-by-moment details of instruction, there was continued refinement of objectives, content, essential questions, formative assessments, and instruction. The teachers' confidence and excitement grew as visions of their lesson being taught took form. The number of lessons actually taught in classrooms increased significantly. Evidence of new teaching now represents a combination of new standards, new strategies, new content, new assessments, and much more. As curriculum becomes increasingly ready, so do teachers. Creating materials of practice that define readiness, teachers learn much more from each other as the collaborative dialogue becomes richer and more specific. We answer essential planning questions about what standards and strategies actually look like when taught, what formative assessments are embedded throughout the lesson. And this measurability allows teachers to assess what worked and what didn't. Finally, what is learned from this level of planning and teaching is easily applied to new lessons. Curriculum renewal continues. Concluding, preparing for new standards to be taught in classrooms. After curriculum maps, unit plans, and even lesson plans, more is required. Time can be your enemy here. Do not run out of time before teams collaborate on the finishing details of classroom-ready materials of practice. Protect and preserve time for this work. As curriculum becomes ready, so do teachers. Thank you for joining me. More resources are available on my website, and more videos are available that outline effective ways to create standards-based, research-based materials of practice that support content and Common Core reading and writing. Thank you.